slow with things.
All right.
Just
Honestly, Ronnie, I'm not techie at all. So please don't worry about that. It's hit and miss
Yeah.
with me. And then I think, oh, how did I do that? And it works. And I go, what did I do?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess just to let you know, so that the event that we have planned for October the 30th and 31st, just Saturday and Sunday, is taking place in London, central London. The location is in the Kensington area. It's the Holiday Inn Kensington Forum. The address, I think, is 78 Cromwell Street, and it's near Gloucester Road Underground, very near that underground, underground station, Gloucester Road.
I know exactly where Gloucester Road Station is, because I met Jane there a few weeks back, because she was doing an event at the Albert Hall. So I met her the same day, and I know where it is pretty well.
Yeah, yeah. And there's plenty of places in the area to stay, but I imagine that a lot of people might share a room if they like, or even maybe you could have 2 or 3 people in a room, and the Holiday Inn itself is pretty affordable. But I've still got plans and things to put together for that. So, I'll get this presentation going for tonight, and maybe we can speak a bit more about it. What we're going to talk about tonight is planning your, let me just make sure. Planning your raw vegan program for success. So what we're going to do tonight is sort of a little bit of a workshop, a little bit of putting together how you would actually design a diet for yourself on this raw vegan diet. And just to start off, like, a lot of people might think that the diet should be quite intuitive and easy to do, and that we should go to our natural foods, or the foods that are most suitable for our body, and that we would just immediately fall in line with it, and our body would give us the right signals. We'd know how much to eat, we'd know the right proportions and all the rest of it. And it's not quite as intuitive as that for some reason. And we'll maybe talk about why that might be the case. But what I've seen is people generally need a little bit of guidance to understand how to do this best, and how much to eat for themselves, and how to plan for it, and things like that we're going to go into tonight. And hopefully we're going to help you make a plan for yourself that will cover your needs and is enjoyable, easy, and fun. I think it's also easier to stick to something if you have a little bit of an idea of how you're going to do it a little bit. And it's probably unusual for people to have their diet planned out a little bit, or thought to think in advance. A lot of people like to be quite spontaneous with how they eat and what they eat, and just follow how they feel that day. And on a raw vegan diet, we kind of have to sometimes plan ahead a little bit, just the nature of the food that we're eating. We have to prepare in advance and know when it's going to be ripe and all the rest of it. So that's what we have to think about. We've already looked into health in this course. We've looked into how difficult it can be to make these changes. We've looked into the negative side of the diet, of the standard diet that most people eat. We've looked at why fruit's the ideal food for human beings, and that it's relatively easy as well from the last presentation to meet the basic nutritional targets on a raw vegan diet. So we can cover everything on this diet. So how do we plan any diet? So let's forget that this is a raw diet or a vegan diet. But how would we start thinking about any new diet we were doing? We'd like to look at a few factors, such as meeting our caloric needs, getting enough food. We'd like to think about availability. So we want to have a diet that is where the food is available to us, obviously, and easily attainable. We want it to fit in with our life as well. So we want to make sure that it's not creating an extra burden, or it's difficult to fit in with our life. We want it to be enjoyable, of course. I think that's very important. We want it to be satisfying and satiating. And Doug Graham often says there's only two questions people ask about food: did you like it, and did you get enough? So that's what we need to think about, making sure we feel satisfied and we get enough, and that we also enjoy the diet, and that's really important. Nutritional sufficiency. We went through that a little bit, quite a lot already, but that's important as well. In the previous presentation, we've looked a little bit into meeting our calorie needs, but let's look at specifically for you personally. A classic problem with this diet has been that many people have under-eaten total calories and lost too much weight. And I've seen that a number of times over and over. And it's very confusing for people because they don't feel like they're under-eating often. They don't feel that they're hungry or hungrier than they should be, but they are consistently losing weight, and sometimes they get underweight and they're still losing weight, and it becomes a bit of an issue, and they still don't think that they need to eat more. And that can happen. Or simply, for a lot of other people, they go back to eating other foods because they're not feeling good or whatever. And one of the main reasons why people undereat is that fruits and vegetables are less calorically dense than processed and cooked foods. We're so used to eating less volume. So that means obviously a smaller meal, a meal that fits on a small plate generally is what people are eating. And we're used to eating that, and we're used to a meal that maybe only takes 10 or 15 or 20 minutes to eat at the most. And we're used to maybe eating quite quickly and quite unconsciously. And when we eat the same volume of fruit as we do our typical previous diet, we will not generally meet our caloric needs. And it would be the same as well if we just follow our feeling as to what is enough when we start out. We often undereat because we feel much more satisfied on fruit, even with a small amount of fruit, than we do on other foods. One of the reasons for that being that fruit with the simple sugars is those are going into the bloodstream very quickly, and that's triggering a feeling of satiation very early on in the meal. And for many people, they take that to mean that they should, stop eating, but they've not really actually filled their stomach and truly satisfied themselves yet. And that's different on a fruit diet or in a meal of fruit for sure. So let's look at how to work out our caloric needs. And maybe some of you know roughly what you need, but it's very good to get specific about it, especially if you're looking to stick to this diet and feel satisfied and good on it. If you're looking to lose weight, it's very good to know how much to eat. If you're looking to gain weight or you're starting to exercise more, you might want to take these things into consideration. Slightly as well, when you get into the winter, when you're in colder weather, if you're outside a lot, if you're working outside, if you're going out for walks a lot, you will be using up more calories. Remember, calories are heat energy. You'll be using up more, so you might need to eat a little bit more as well. You might find yourself lose a bit of weight in the winter if you stick on a raw vegan diet because of that. So what we need to do, there's many different applications online to figure out calories. Is it calculator.com or .net? The NHS, I think, might have one as well. And they'll also give you other things like your body mass index and stuff. But you really need your current weight, your current your weight, your height, your activity level, your gender. So that's basically, and your age, that's basically what you'll need for the calculation. So I'm just going to go through the way that you do the calculation if you didn't have the calculator, if you don't know how to use one of those websites or whatever. So the calorie calculation is called the Harris-Benedict equation. It's designed to work out your BMR, which is the basal metabolic rate. And that's the number of calories that you require just to basically run your metabolism without you, for example, having any other activity in the day. So if you were just to lie in bed all day and do nothing and no activity whatsoever, then that would roughly be what your basal metabolic rate would be. And to calculate that, you use your sex, age, weight, and the original form is here. I'm not sure if that's going to not fit on the page there. Let's check. Not sure if I can go down. It's, I don't, sorry, I'm using a different computer here, so it's not quite fitting on the
Doesn't
screen
matter,
there.
Ronnie, we can look it up, you know, we can check it out. So.
Right, okay. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's there on, it's online, but that's what you would check for. You can have a search for that. If you want to be very accurate with it, you can look up this and do it exactly for yourself. Once you've worked out your BMR, now you can also find a rough version of your BMR by taking your weight in pounds and multiplying by 10. Now it's not very accurate, but it's roughly somewhere in the ballpark. So that's a way to do it if you're trying to figure it out a bit easier. But then what you do when you take this first part of the calculation, you multiply it by an activity factor, and that would be, you have to work out what your activity level is. So sedentary, office job, you kind of maybe walk to the car and back, but you don't do much other exercise, 1.2. If you're lightly active, maybe 1 to 3 times a week exercise, you multiply by 1.3. But that's still a fair amount of exercise. It's even though it's light exercise, it's still, it's not just going for a short walk, for example. Moderately active, 3 to 5 times a week of exercise, 1.5, and very active, 1.7, extra active, 1.9. So you use these activity factors, you multiply it together, and I think we've got an example of 5'7" female, 40 years old, 140 pounds, office job, so little to no exercise, and you can see just the calculation being filled in there. The equation is 655.1 plus 4.35 times the weight in pounds plus 4.7 times the height in centimeters, I think. 4.7 times the age. We'll fill it all in. Just going through it quickly. And the BMR turns up as 1391. We multiply that by the activity factor, and we get 1669.
Sorry, Ronnie, what's 655.1? What does that refer to?
So that is actually in the equation. That's a number that's in the female version of the Harris-Benedict equation.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It starts off 655.1 plus, okay, and these other parts to it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a lot of kind of a complex equation there, but it's really good to do that. I do advise that you get an accurate idea of what you require, and it really does work as well. Like if you use these numbers for yourself, you will, it will feel right. And if you use it to lose weight and you cut down on your calories, you'll really feel the difference there as well. You'll realize how different you feel when you're not quite hitting the amount that you need. So
I think that's quite good because, I mean, for example, my weight is about 115, 118 pounds. Multiplied by 10 would be 1,180, something like that, wouldn't it? If that's just metabolism, and I'm relatively active. So I suppose I multiply that by 1.3, 1.4, be about 1,800, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would, if I was, I would be happy to go through that. If I was using my own laptop, I'd be able to jump back and forth and do the calculation for you, and we could work it out. But for example, there was one time we were doing this presentation in this course, and there was a young woman that was in the course, and she was saying, I've lost my period recently. Mm-hmm. And she was just talking about that. And I said, well, there's a chance that you went underweight, and you're not eating enough. And we we just went online and we worked out her body mass index, and she was underweight. Just slightly, but she was underweight. And we calculated what she needed to eat and all the rest of it. And then that all made a lot more sense. And then she started to eat enough, and her period came back pretty much straight away and everything. So it's amazing how accurate it can be using these numbers and what an effect it can have. But it really can help. It's good to know. So we've already looked at the options for meeting our calories: fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds on a raw vegan diet. And our staple food, every population has a staple food in its diet. So, or a number of a couple of staple foods. Usually it's a form of carbohydrate, as this is the body's preferred source of fuel. Human beings are plant eaters. To gain sufficient calories, we should look to fruit on a raw vegan diet as our main source of carbohydrate. And we should really pick some staple fruits. That's something that I think anyway. I think that it's good to have certain fruits that are basically the ones that you rely on most often. Now, doesn't mean that that's what you eat every day for every meal, but it means that whatever happens, you have certain fruits. Maybe you always have them around, or you just know they're always available. You know how much you need to eat from them, and so on. And you know where you can source them and all the rest of it, to make it easy for you. I think that a staple fruit that you're going to rely on must be available and abundant. I think it must be relatively calorie dense, so it's got a good amount of calories in it. I think it must be consistently enjoyable to eat, so it needs to be something that you want to eat. And ideally be affordable for whatever your budget is. So the options really available to us probably in the UK, bananas are a fantastic option. And I know for a lot of people, bananas are not their favorite fruit, or you've had a lot of bananas and all the rest of it. But bananas are very flexible, and if you don't like one way of having them, there's so many other ways to eat bananas. You can make them into a pudding by mashing them up, and it tastes different to if you want to dry them slightly in the dehydrator. You can cut them up and dry them as little segments. You can obviously turn them into ice cream by freezing them, and obviously just eating them as they are. You can chop them up with other fruits. You can maybe add a bit of sauce to them. So there's a lot of ways of eating bananas, and bananas are really your best friend if there's nothing else around. And for me personally, I really like how I feel if I'm eating a lot of bananas. I think they're a fantastic staple fruit. If you don't quite like them yet, it's good to develop a bit of a taste for them. Persimmons, coming up this time of year, there will be more and more persimmons, most likely, and they're an excellent staple fruit. I know that some people in the winter, this becomes more of their staple fruit is persimmons, and they're not so abundant in the supermarkets sometimes, but certainly if you go to the fruit markets, you can get persimmons are quite cheap actually, and you can get trays of them and trays of ripe persimmons. And the only issue is that they do take a while to ripen, depending on the variety and how ripe they are and all that. But they're an excellent staple fruit if you can get them. Mangoes are another good fruit. They're a little bit less consistent than bananas. You can never quite know if they're going to be ripe or not. If you go to the shop, sometimes they're ripe, sometimes they're rock hard. Are they going to ripen perfectly? You don't know for sure. In the summer, we've definitely got a fantastic supply of Pakistani and Indian mangoes, and they can be a great option for the summer months. Oranges and citrus in general, once again, they're a bit of a winter fruit. Later in the year, going into January, you have blood oranges that appear that are really special. So oranges, and maybe you would make them in the form of orange juice, really turn them into a juice to get some calories from that. And apples are a fantastic fruit for traveling, for taking to the office. Very easy, very clean to eat, don't make a mess, very easy to travel with, to take with you. I think that what some people get wrong with apples is people are used to this thing of they want a crunchy apple. That's what people tend to want. But if you're eating a lot of apples, like 6 or 7, you're probably not going to want them all to be super crunchy because your jaw will be a little bit sore by the end of it. So you might want to go towards the softer options. Right now, there are a lot of British apples in the shops, coming into the shop, and they're a bit softer. They are much more edible. I tend to like to cut them up with one of these circle cut, one of those machines that you kind of push down on them and it turns them into segments. I quite like to eat them like that. But yeah, apples, once again, high in calories, very consistent, very affordable. Apples and bananas are the most affordable if you want to bring down the price a little bit. And then pineapple is overlooked a little bit, but pineapples are basically there throughout the year. I think they're underrated. I think that people sometimes assume that they always are bad quality, they're acidic, and it's just, they are a little bit hit and miss, but you will often find really sweet, good pineapples quite a lot. I eat pineapples all the time. Once in a while I get the bloody tongue thing, but that's because I realize I've got to a certain threshold and I keep on eating because I'm enjoying it. So that's my own fault, but pineapples always around. Melons, a little bit less calorie dense, as are pineapples, a little bit less calories. Melons are fantastic if, once again, at particular times. They're not always good, but people can eat melons as a staple, especially if you have bigger melons around and sweeter melons like snowball melons that are probably going to be around now as well, are starting to be in the shops quite soon. I think I've left off grapes there, but grapes can be a good staple fruit as well. You can certainly get a lot of your calories from grapes quite easily. And once again, grapes change throughout the year. So sometimes there's fantastic grapes. Right now, I don't think the grapes are all that good in the shops. We're not going through a good phase, but they'll tend to come back cyclically as we go through the year. For many raw vegans, bananas are a great staple, affordable, available year-round, consistently tasty, can be prepared in a number of different ways, calorically dense, and they're easy to track the calories. So if you know that you're under eating by 400 calories a day typically, then you know, well, if I just add in 4 extra bananas in the day, then that'll be me. I'll be hitting my calorie targets. So they're quite easy to use like that. I want to talk about mono meals. People that do a fruit-based diet tend to go towards mono meals. A mono meal, what we're talking about there is one type of food at a time until you are full. This is one of Doug Graham's phrases as well, one at a time until you're full. And he says that this is the model of nature, is that animals eat one particular food at a time until they are full. They don't go from one food, they don't mix different foods together typically, because they're not able to really. They have to eat the food when it is there, when it is available to them. So they're not gathering ingredients and eating them all together, of course. A lot of people starting off in this diet will want the variety, and you might have seen when you come to the festival, you can really tell someone that's very new to the diet because they will take a small plate and they'll fill it with one of every fruit, you know, or 1 or 2 of every fruit, and they'll make a bit of a salad, fruit salad. And that's how a lot of people like to, or are used to kind of eating meals of fruit, or slightly larger meals of fruit. But it tends to be the case that people on this type of a diet start to go towards mono meals, one at a time until you're full. As I say, it follows the model in nature. It is technically or typically probably easier for digestion. Whether it's much easier for digestion, I'm not sure, but the idea is that the body, when you introduce food into the mouth, for example, your body starts to prepare the stomach for that particular type of food. And therefore, if you just eat the same food, then the body is already prepared to eat that. and it is technically easier for the digestion. Once again, I don't know if you would notice a huge difference, but it does seem to be the case. But really, over time, mono meals just become very enjoyable and satisfying, and it makes more sense and it feels good to just eat that one fruit at a time rather than jumping from one to another or having all this mixture of flavor. And even when it comes to your smoothies, you might come to a point where you actually just enjoy having one ingredient, whether it's a mango smoothie or a persimmon smoothie or just straight orange juice or something like that. But you might just find it simple and enjoyable and very satisfying like that. So if we've got this lady and she needs 1,669 calories per day, so she knows that. And if she's going to choose bananas as her staple, then maybe she's going to plan to at least 50% of her diet as bananas. So if that's about 1,600 calories, then about 50% of her diet would be 800 calories. So half of her diet. So she might plan to eat about 8 bananas a day as just her kind of staple diet that she has regularly. And she can plan for that as well. So she can say, well, if I need 8 bananas a day for next week, then I need to buy 7 times 8 bananas, which I'm pretty sure is 56. But I've not done my times tables in a while, so I don't want to embarrass myself there, but I think it probably is. She can plan in advance to start in 5 to 7 days, buy bananas to allow them to ripen. Oh, it's 56. I've already put it in there. Good. So for a week, she would require 56 bananas. So it's actually very helpful with things like that, especially for people starting out, once again, to have this. I know that it feels a bit strange to be going into numbers like this, but we have to remember we're not in an ideal environment. We don't have people around us doing the same thing. We don't have the food available to us all the time. If we did have all those things, I think it would be very easy for people to just do this diet with no problems at all and eat enough. If every time you went to your friend's house, they were encouraging you to eat fruit, if you went to your parents, they had ripe fruit all over the place. If you were walking down the street and there was fruit trees, I think it would be very easy for you to eat enough. But with the world as it is, it's not really supporting us. So we have to be a little bit planned in advance. So it's good to have a bit of an idea what to buy. So we've got 800 calories already from bananas over 1 or 2 meals. So we need to fill up the rest of the calories. And the majority of the rest of the calories should still come mostly from carbohydrate-based fruits and vegetables. So we don't want to get 800 calories from bananas and 800 calories from nuts and seeds and oil and a little bit of vegetables. We still want to get more calories from carbohydrates. The reason for that is we want to maintain, in order to do this the healthiest and feel really good on the diet, we want to maintain a roughly 80-10-10 proportion. It's very easy for people to fill up or try and fill up on eating more fat. And for some reason, that's another mistake that people have made. Some people undereat, some people end up over consuming because they are eating a lot of fat to try and make up their calories. And we need to be aware of that. The 80-10-10 ratio, of course, doesn't actually come from this book. It was something that was around in the 70s, probably potentially before that. And you can find nutrition books from the 70s and so on that mention this ratio. It's also a similar ratio to what was called the blue zones. These were the 4 areas in the world, the healthiest populations that were studied, the longest living populations with the least disease. These were studied and their diet was mostly vegetarian and it was high carbohydrate. It was a carbohydrate-based diet and it was close to this ratio of 80% or above carbohydrates and fairly low fat at 10% or less. The protein stays pretty consistent at 10%, regardless of what kind of diet you do. But the fat and the carbohydrate are what will change. 80-10-10 is a caloronutrient ratio. It's a suggestion of what proportion of our calories should come from which macronutrient. So the macronutrients are carbohydrate, fat, and protein. And so this ratio is the ratio of calories that should come from each of those sources for our ideal diet. And once again, I totally understand that this seems like a lot of numbers, a lot of maths, but actually it's very simple because most of the sweet fruits and most of the vegetables fall in line with this automatically. So we only have to be concerned about some of the more dense fatty foods like avocados, like nuts and seeds, and we have to potentially limit them a little bit to make sure we fall in line with this. And that's really all we have to do. Eat enough fruit, eat enough vegetables, and limit our fat a little bit, and we'll pretty much automatically hit these proportions. 80% carbohydrate is the minimum we should get. So 80 is the minimum for carbohydrate, it's not the maximum. And 10% is the maximum for fat, not the minimum. So we want actually less fat. And as I said, they don't need to be calculated because they are the proportion inherent in most sweet fruits, and they're in line with most vegetables as well. The 80-10-10 ratio is, especially with a plant-based vegan style diet, is also recommended by Professor T. Colin Campbell, as he quotes it, the healthiest possible diet. He's the author of the most comprehensive nutrition study of all time, which was called the China Study. These are also the ratios found in the countries, longest living populations, the blue zones. And why do we want to keep fat below 10%? Well, this idea is something that comes from, it partly is to do with avoiding disease, but the way that Doug Graham puts it is that when fat goes above 10% of total calories, the body's ability to uptake, transfer, and assimilate sugar and oxygen to our cells is compromised. So as fat increases in our diet, we're actually inhibiting our body's ability to do some of its functions as well as it can. And this is why athletes, when they're looking to perform at the highest level, will look to have a diet that is very high carbohydrate, very low fat, because they need the oxygen and the sugar to be assimilated and transferred and uptaken as quickly, as efficient as possible in order to perform at the highest level possible. Prior to the 80-10-10 diet, it was very common for raw vegans to eat much more of their calories from fat. And if you've ever visited a raw vegan restaurant, if you've read some of the older raw vegan recipe books, you'll find a lot of the recipes are very heavy in nuts and seeds. Some of them have oils as well. And they're trying to replicate some of the heavy flavors and the density and the textures of cooked food. And they do a good job of that, but it's not a healthy, it wouldn't be a healthy diet to stay with. Dr. Graham suggests that many people that he worked with were eating diets consisting of as much as 80% fat without realizing it. So they didn't realize they were doing that. And once again, this comes down to people often don't have a very good intuitive feel for exactly what their diet is, and they didn't think they were eating that much fat. Such a high fat diet is unsustainable for humans for a number of reasons, for digestion, and once again for mainly for digestion, and also for the effect it has on blood and blood sugar. And particularly with a high fat diet, we get these swings in blood sugar. It becomes harder for our body to regulate the blood sugar, and there's more swings in that. Over time, it will cause more problems. So if we go back to this example, we want to not just hit 1600 calories, we also want to stick basically to 80-10-10 proportions. So one example might be 800, so 8 bananas and then 450 calories from a liter of freshly squeezed orange juice. or it could be 450 extra calories from 2 or 3 large mangoes, or it could be 1 kilogram of grapes, which is roughly 2 tubs of grapes if you buy grapes from the typical supermarket, or it'd be 4.5 apples. You could then finish off the day with 419 calories from a large evening salad with 1 head of lettuce, half an avocado, some lemon juice, 300 grams of tomatoes, 10 kilograms of sunflower seeds, 1 red pepper, 1 cucumber. So a lot of variety there, and you're getting a lot of variety of nutrients, a lot of variety of fruits and vegetables, lots of options there for kind of putting a day together. And it's good to have some of these options, and you can do a day like that many hundreds of times, and you know it's going to work for you. So that's the good thing. You'll probably find the salads and the meals that work for you and that you like over time. Once you're starting to do that, you probably want to track your weight and be aware of energy levels. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to be obsessed with their weight or think too much about it. And I appreciate that. And so this isn't really, it might not be important for everyone to do this, but it might be a good idea to just track weight, not with any intention of losing weight or gaining weight, but just tracking it once a week or maybe once every fortnight as you're starting this diet, just to see where you're going with it. Are you losing? Are you gaining weight? Are you staying the same? Just to figure out where you are, and then you can adjust a little bit for whatever your particular goals are. And it's important to have some kind of a goal with your diet of what you're looking to achieve, so that you know how you want to plan it. So you may wish to continue to track weight just to make sure you're eating enough and not too little or too much. Be aware of your energy levels, as on a raw vegan diet, hunger is not felt the same. You might have heard of a concept called true hunger, and some of the raw food educators will say when you're on a raw food diet, true hunger is not felt in the stomach. True hunger is felt in the throat area. Now, I'm still trying to work out really what that means, to be honest, for myself, but the signal for hunger will most likely change for you, and it won't be as obviously in the stomach or in the abdomen. And that can be a little bit confusing at first for people. And I think the reason that happens is the body is, the stomach is eating foods that are much more easy to pass through, and it's more comfortable with. And therefore, you don't get that empty feeling anymore, that kind of empty feeling that people get, what people call hunger pangs or hunger pains. So that kind of disappears. You no longer feel that so much, which is interesting. And so hunger really becomes more about an awareness of your energy levels, of how you feel. If you're thinking about food a lot, you probably should be eating more. If you're starting to struggle to concentrate or focus, if you've had a good night's sleep and you're not particularly tired, and your performance is going down a little bit, if you're getting a bit cranky, things like that can indicate that maybe it's time to eat a bit more. And even though you might not feel it, there's a good chance that that's what it'll be. Adjust your calories if your activity levels increase. Hopefully, as you eat healthier, you'll want to also embrace an active lifestyle. And if you do increase your activity levels, then it's a good idea to allow for more exercise by adjusting your calories up the way to make way for that. In terms of over the course of a day, you're probably going to start with more meals and then gradually reduce those down to less. I know a few people that they might only eat 2 meals a day as a raw vegan, 2 big meals, and others will have 3 and others will have more. I don't have any particular number, so I don't exactly have a consistent plan with that, but I certainly don't sit down and just eat 3 meals a day, and I'm happy to eat more than that if I have to. Another thing I want to say that I think is really important is consistency. It's just easy for you to be more consistent if you're sticking to a new plan. If you're changing all the time and changing every day, it can become a little bit taxing, a little bit exhausting. And sometimes it's good to just figure out your plan and sort of stick to it for a while as you get comfortable with the diet. When I started off on a raw vegan diet for the first time, I made banana smoothie in the morning or at night, and I just knew I had that for lunch, for breakfast and lunch. And I did that every day for many months. And that made it very easy for me. And it also meant at the end of the day, I didn't feel so hungry, and I didn't end up making a bad choice at the end of the day that I regretted. So I was very consistent at first. I don't do that all the time now, but that's what my plan was at that time, and it worked really well. It would be easy to have ideas of typical days in advance and typical options and typical meals and things that you enjoy. Having regular staples allows you to plan and shop in advance and also buy in bulk for better prices. Buying in advance also helps for always having fruit ripe and ready to eat. So you really do have to think ahead on this diet, which goes against our intuition a little bit, and it goes against how we really want to be with food. We would rather be a bit more spontaneous, but we can be that in certain situations, but we want to be a little bit, have a bit of a plan in advance as well, if that doesn't work for us. Variety is important, but I don't think it's absolutely essential. If you want to just eat the same foods quite often, it's not going to be, I don't think it'll be a big problem. But it's very good to get variety, and it's enjoyable, and it's something you should try and expand your palate. If you don't like lychees or papayas or certain fruits, it's good to try and develop a taste for them and continue to give them a chance and keep trying them. Durian is another fruit that a lot of people don't like often at first, but in time you can develop a taste for it and really enjoy it. I didn't like avocados at first. I didn't eat tomatoes at first. I didn't like papayas. I didn't like lychees. I didn't particularly like durian at first. A lot of fruits I developed a taste for over time. So, and I really enjoy them all now. So you can definitely expand your palate. Be aware of seasonal changes and take advantage of the different fruits as they come into season. And this is one of the slightly fun, adventurous, spontaneous aspects of this diet, is that you don't ever quite know what's going to be in the shop, what's going to come into season. And you get excited because you think you get a feeling that something is going to come, or the mangoes that are there, you get a feeling they're going to change. Some new ones are going to come in, the grapes are going to come in, whatever it is. And you start to develop an awareness for the varieties. And I had a variety of blueberries last night called Eureka, and I liked the name, but it turned out they were really good as well. And so I'll remember those for the next time I see them, and I'll know they're probably going to be pretty good. So it's good to know that. I like, for example, the Discovery apples that are often grown in the UK, but I think they're actually an American variety originally. But I love those. I like, in terms of grapes, I like the green Thompson grapes that are very common, but I also like the red flame grapes. They're my favorite grape. I like Triumph persimmons, but they're kind of a bit rare. I like the snowball melons. So you get to like certain varieties of things, and you learn to look out for them, and you really enjoy them. So there's a lot of fun in this diet. And if you travel and go somewhere else, it becomes a bit of a challenge. It can be really fun to just go to the fruit market and see what's going to be there, because you never quite know. So I think it's good fun, really. Focus more on mono meals, but aim to get as much variety throughout the year. So you're not necessarily going to have 25 fruits each day, but you want to have hundreds of fruits throughout the year. That's really the way of thinking about it. You might want to consider holiday destinations and spots that may contain other exotic fruits, or even places like the south of Italy that has fantastic produce, California, places like that that are well renowned for having fantastic produce. I really love a place in Canada called the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia. That's a fantastic fruit region, really amazing fruit region. And even parts of France, and there's particular seasons, there's even festivals, there's places that have festivals for particular fruits. There's even apple days in the UK. I think there might be plum days sometimes, pear days sometimes. So you can maybe go and visit local farms or orchards and places like that, and just be aware of these different things as they come into season. Continue to focus more on monomeals, and consider finding holiday destinations. What I would say is don't expect too much from going to warm climates. A lot of people assume they go to a warm climate, the fruit's going to be so much better. It's not always the case, and it can sometimes be a bit more limited than you realize. So it's worth knowing in advance. I always think that I absolutely feel totally comfortable traveling anywhere in the US, anywhere in Europe, pretty much, and I know that I'm going to get plenty of fruit. I just know that there's going to be enough. And you would expect that maybe going to somewhere like Thailand or Mexico, when I was this year, that it would be maybe even better, because maybe you assume that there's a lot of fruit that can be grown locally, but it's not always quite like that. And sometimes the fruit isn't as good as you expect it to be. So I'm really absolutely very grateful and happy to live in the UK. I really think we've got a great supply of fruit. It gets better every year as far as I see. And as long as you know how to pick good fruit and you learn how to pick, there's a lot of bad fruit as well that won't ripen and won't be very good. But once you learn to ignore that stuff and identify it and just focus on the good stuff, then you'll probably never complain too much of it again. To make it a bit easier, being well planned makes the diet easier. As I say, buying in advance, having an idea of what you need, all that makes it easier. If you're going places, going to work, probably bringing a smoothie or bringing your own fruit or your salad in a tub or in a box prepared in advance will help you a lot. For working at an office, maybe you'll find a smoothie is easier or more convenient than having 8 bananas on your desk. I don't know. And so it just kind of depends on what you're prepared to do. I know that Matthew works in an office and he quite likes bringing in lots of fruit, and everyone thinks it's kind of funny, but and I did that as well previously, but other people maybe don't want to do that. So but a smoothie is very easy to fit in with any kind of job or whatever. Another thing I say is going to restaurants or going to other people's houses. Sometimes people will make up their own salad dressing and just ask for a salad, and they'll just turn up with their own dressing at a restaurant or whatever. For transitioning into the diet, a few tips. Remember that few people actually change overnight, and that's really with everything, any kind of major lifestyle change. I was talking to a man today, and he was talking about how he doesn't really think he'll ever give up meat. And I was thinking that was exactly where I was. That's exactly who I was at one time. I ate a lot of meat. I ate meat every day. And I didn't force myself to change. Something in me changed. And I think until something in you changes, you're unlikely to actually change and commit to a new diet. So sometimes you have to give yourself that time, think it over, keep on educating yourself, keep on experimenting, keep on learning. And, some point, a part of you might just change and it clicks. So transition can take time. And a lot of people go back and forth. And when I talk to people, it's the same stories, it's the same reasons that they went back and forth. They had the same experiments and things like that. So It's very common. Many people start by having fruit for breakfast or fruit before breakfast. So if you're looking for a place to start, fruit for breakfast, or the fruit as the first thing before your breakfast. And then gradually, as you get used to that, have fruit for lunch, which was a bigger change than fruit. Fruit for breakfast is quite easy for a lot of people. Fruit for lunch, a little bit more difficult. And then gradually, fruit will become part of your evening meal as well, and a large salad in the evening. And that's the way a lot of people do it. And they also gradually eliminate different foods at a time while they're doing this. So they might cut out bread, or they might cut out, well, of course, if they're on a standard diet, they might cut out dairy first, and then they gradually cut out fish, and then they cut out other forms of meat, and then they cut out processed foods, so they just eat whole foods, and then they cut out pasta, and then they cut out bread, and then they cut out potatoes, and they just do one thing at a time gradually, and eventually they're left with a very simple diet. And that's a strategy as well, just an elimination process of going towards an ideal diet, one step at a time. So this will help lead to success gradually over time, and it'll help you change habits for life. So you're not, there's no real desperation to do it overnight. What you really want to make sure you've really transitioned properly, and that you're really happy with it, and that you're going to stick to it for long term. So that's the presentation tonight. Thanks a lot for joining. Any questions at all? Any comments? I think there's some questions here. Just joined, not sure what. Yeah, so what we're going to do, we'll compile a list for local accommodation options in that area, of different price ranges and things like that. So I can compile that list. We'll get that sent out to you. But you can, if you use Google as well, if you use Google and search for hotels in London, you'll be able to find many in that area. There's a lot of hotels around Hyde Park, and a lot of cheap ones as well.
There are loads of
Someone I went
hostels,
onto booking.com.
Yeah,
Yeah,
booking.com, hotel.com.
There's loads.
Google.com as well.
There's hostels.com, there's hotels.com. You just have to, go from one site to the other, basically, because sometimes they've got the same place at different prices as well. So, I mean, I actually phoned one up as well. So I think there's one called, what was it called? Earl's Court something or other, and that was like,
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's
like,
funny with it's funny with these hotels. You phone them up, and it says, click 1 for reception, click 2 for bookings, click 3 for if you've already booked, click 4 for if you've got a party over 10, click 6 if you've got this, and then you're waiting through this, and then you click the number, and it just goes through to the same person. You think, what's the point in that, So yeah, it's trying to book these hotels nowadays. It seems like it's easier to do it online than almost any other way, but
when I tried to do it, the guy, because he was he was foreign, he didn't really understand everything. He just in the end said, go to booking.com.
They're all foreign, yeah. If you phone them up in London, they're all foreign accents.
It depends where you are, because when I had to go and have eye surgery in Oxford, I just, found it on booking.com or whatever. I did actually quite a number of sites because Oxford is expensive. And then I found the cheapest one I could possibly find. Then I phoned them up and said, look, I'm staying for 3 nights. Can you knock off 20 quid? So they did, because that meant that, they weren't losing the commission to booking.com. So we sort of split.
That's very cool, yeah. Yeah.
I would advise people, if possible, to phone up first and say, well, is that your best deal? Because I'm going to be there for X number of nights, or, there's 4 of us or whatever.
Sure, well, that's good. And yeah, so I basically, there's a lot of availability. It seems, I don't think there's anything particularly going on at that time of year or on that weekend. I mean, it is Halloween weekend, but it doesn't appear that it's particularly busy from having phoned a lot of places up already. And there's a lot of availability. So, and I think maybe with COVID, maybe people are still not traveling, working as much. So yeah. But anyway, on Thursday, we'll have Raphael. He'll be giving a presentation. It's going to be a bit more of a food demo. And he's a fantastic presenter, and his food demos are, he's got a lot of knowledge. His presentation at the festival was excellent. And I will unfortunately not join you on that night. But probably my mum will be running that night. So she'll run it, and Raphael's fantastic. So you're in good hands. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Any particular questions or anything coming up from tonight? I hope it helped to give a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of an outline for how you might, if what you're doing is not quite working for you, you can go back to this video and go, okay, maybe I should try this a little bit more. You know, you can try and just follow the way you feel good doing it. And then if you think maybe this is not quite working, something's not quite working, you can go back to this presentation always and have a look through it and take it step by step and go, okay, let's try and do it like that. And the 80-10-10 approach, getting enough calories, fruit-based, it really does work very well. And when you go even slightly off it, with the nuts and seeds and the more fats and things like that, you really do feel a big difference. There's a big difference there. So so yeah, that's been my experience.
Is there any issues, because you're talking about blood sugar, is that in any way related to anything to do with insulin? Does it affect insulin by any chance? I mean, I'm assuming if you're following this, you won't develop insulin resistance or something.
Yeah, I mean, most of you are probably not at the stage where anything, well, I'm not sure. Some of you might have been diabetic at some point or be on the verge of it. And yeah, blood sugar is related to insulin, but it's not caused by insulin. The problem is insulin sensitivity, which develops in the, or a lack of, which develops in the cells from the exposure to the high fat diet over the years. And the idea is that the fat gets into the cells, gets into the muscles and so on, and is having this inhibitory impact on insulin being able to do its job. And the job of insulin is to efficiently and quickly transport when there's an excess of sugar in the bloodstream, the body indicates to the pancreas to create insulin. That goes into the bloodstream, and the insulin helps transport the sugar into all of the various cells, which is then used, the blood sugar is used as part of the cell's metabolism. Essentially, the cell uses up the sugar, it burns up the sugar. So with type 2 diabetes, what's happening is the insulin sensitivity, so the cells are not as sensitive to opening essentially to the insulin receptor, and therefore the sugar is not as efficiently getting into the cells, and it starts to rise in the bloodstream, and that's where blood sugar rises, and for diabetics in particular. That can take some time to heal, but it heals basically 100% of the time for people that stick to the right kind of a healthy diet, and a low-fat diet, particularly low-fat thing. But the blood sugar, but that's diabetes. You don't necessarily need to be diabetic to get these blood sugar swings that are a bit more related to just having a lot of fat and sugar in the diet, in the bloodstream at the same time. So you're not, yeah, it probably is related to insulin as well, but it's not the same as diabetes in that you can get any person, a totally healthy person without any diabetes or whatever, and you can give them loads of fat, loads of sugar, and they'll get these atypical swings in blood sugar. And it might be just slightly for you. It might not be go into the bad ranges or unsafe range, but you'll probably feel it with the accompanying inconsistent energy levels. And when people complain about energy, it's often that their energy is up and down. And if you want your energy to be very consistent, then a low-fat diet is going to be the best for that, because it will be consistently your blood sugar will be very consistent and staying in the healthy range and so on. So that's the way it works, from my understanding of it. It's a very basic understanding. There is more technical detail to that, and you can go into way more detail. But that's roughly how it all works.
And just one last thing, who actually did the presentation last Thursday? Because as you know, I was doing the interview, so I haven't actually had the chance to look at it. Can you just say what the program was last Thursday?
Yeah, it was Andy. Andy Cowan gave a presentation about juicing.
Oh yeah, I
So
managed to get a
talking
little
about
bit on
juicing,
Zoom.
and he
Yeah,
was talking about a little bit about his juice business and the juices that he likes and things like that, and
Okay,
equipment
thanks.
that he likes and all that stuff.
Okay, because I did get a bit of that because I was on the coach coming back, but that's fine. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Kathy. I think Kathy's left. Her dinner's ready. Very good. So thanks everyone, and I'll speak to you all on. I'll be back next Monday, but on Thursday you'll be in the capable hands of Raphael Resch, and trust me, that's going to be great. That's going to be a great presentation. So thank you very much, everyone, and